Welcome everyone to Gilda's Club's presentation along with Chef Ryan Callahan and cookingforchemo.org to our Cooking for Chemo class. And I will hand it off to Ryan.
Hello everyone, I'm Chef Ryan Callahan. I'm the founder of Cooking for Chemo. That's me, Chef Ryan. So what I'm here to talk to you guys today is about Cooking for Chemo. And what we do here at Cooking for Chemo is we help everyone learn why their food tastes weird now, why it tastes bad, and how to help you regain your appetite and fight the most common chemotherapy side effects. And of course, we help you make your food taste great again, because that's what we're all about here at Cooking for Chemo. And so what we're going to learn today is we're going to learn about how you perceive food. Like, how do you understand it in your life experience, if that makes sense? And that's a really highfalutin way of saying we're going to help you understand why food tastes the way it does. And what we're going to really focus on today is we're going to focus on the differences between what food tastes like now, which is during chemo or after chemo, and what it used to taste like before chemo, and because they are different. And what we talk about a lot is what happens is what you remember food tasting like and what it tastes like now, they're misaligned. And what happens is that causes confusion, that causes disinterest in food, and of course that causes loss of appetite because you get disheartened. And so just a little bit about me before we get too started. So like I said, I'm Chef Ryan Callahan, the founder of Cooking for Chemo, author of Cooking for Chemo and After, Chef Ryan's How to Cook Cookbook, Chef Ryan Callahan's Tasting Journal, Cooking for Kids with Cancer. I also write a comic book. I write a lot of articles. We do a podcast. I'm a busy guy. I do a lot of stuff, and it's all stuff for people to learn about food, to enjoy their food, to get a quality of life back, and that's what we're all about. And a lot of people always ask, Chef Ryan, how did you get involved in cancer? And the answer is very simply that I was drugged into it, and I had no choice in it. I actually lost both of my grandfathers when I was in high school, and I lost my best friend in college to cancer. And in 2013, my mother was diagnosed with HER2 positive breast cancer. And I spent an entire year as her caregiver, literally live-in caregiver, cooking 3 to 5 meals a day, cooking, cleaning, shopping, taking to appointments, running around. I was a full-time caregiver. This was not a part-time kind of job. And I knew that when my mom got diagnosed, I knew about, the mouth sores, the nausea, the loss of appetite, and what rapid weight loss. But I didn't realize why these things happened or what we could do to combat them. And so I knew going into it that I had a challenge. And as a chef, I really invite any culinary challenge. Even if I win, even if I lose, I just have fun competing at all because I love to cook and I love food. It's really my passion in life. And so in this year spending time with my mom and caregiving for her, I literally cooked every meal, and I searched the internet and I scoured everything. I talked to cancer organizations. I talked to lots of people. And basically what I found out is that nobody knew how to combat metallic taste or loss of appetite or the nausea. They just had little ideas of things that had been passed from person to person, and there was no real authoritative guide to do it. And so I sat down and I cooked for my mom, and I tried this thing and I tried this thing, and I kept trying. And about her third treatment of chemotherapy, that I made a big vat of chicken and dumplings, and I added 2 tablespoons of red wine vinegar and 2 tablespoons of sugar to a big 8-quart pot. And all of a sudden, my mom went from only being able to eat just a little bit to eating 4 whole bowls. And that for me was a breakthrough moment when I realized, light bulb goes on here, right? There's something here. And so we sat down and I worked with my mom with what's called a tasting journal, which could just be a piece of paper. It could also be a notebook. It could be a formally written tasting journal. It could be anything, right? You sit down, and basically what I did was I kept track of everything that my mom ate, and I found the patterns. What did she like? What did she not like? What function did this have in addition? What did this do? And what I realized, and what became, is that there is a system and a pattern to the way that people taste and eat and the way that they experience the world, and that the true way that you combat these chemotherapy side effects is by first understanding how you experience food and flavor. And by understanding how you experience food and flavor, you can then use simple, easy tricks to adjust your cooking and just the way you communicate about food and adjust your recipes for your preferences. Because what we've learned, and as I've talked about already, what happens before chemo and what happens during, what happens after, those are all 3 separate places of your life. There are 3 separate things that you like, and you perceive the world differently during those 3 things. And so what this is going to help you guys do is this is going to help you regain your appetite, combat metallic tastes, combat mouth sores, nausea, and inability to chew and swallow. And that's what we're going to focus on today. But what we're going to first start with is what's called roundness of flavor. So roundness of flavor is a really basic culinary theory. It's my personal culinary theory, and it basically explains the world like this. You don't taste food with just your sense of taste, right? You experience it with all 5 of your senses, which are taste, smell, touch, sight, sound, and of course your 6th sense, which isn't like I'm going to be reading your mind. Your birthday is November 13th. Your grandmother's name was Marion, and I'm going to bend all the spoons in the house with my mind. No. It's your 6th sense, as in it's the filter. It's the sense with which you start making things make sense, and that is your memory and association. We'll talk a lot about that in this class. So if you remember nothing else from this class, what you guys first need to know is that everyone is different. I taste things differently than you do. My wife tastes things differently. Everybody's different. And because everybody's different, right, there are a lot of similarities, but everyone's different, right? Because everyone's different and we have different life experiences, we have different preferences, different senses of taste, we have different senses of smell. You know, one of those great examples is cilantro. Some people love cilantro. Some people hate cilantro, and that's because you either can smell the smell of cilantro or you can't. It either smells and tastes like soap and dirt to you, or it tastes like lemony freshness with a hint of pepper and delightfulness, right? So it either tastes really good to you or really bad, and that's because everyone's different. And because that's something that's beyond your control, it's important for you to know what you like and what you don't like. And that's what we're going to start learning about here in just a second. So just talked about your 5 flavors, right? Or your 5 senses, roundness of flavor, right? Taste, smell, touch, sight, sound, memory, and association. So what we're going to do here in this first part of the class is we're going to go through our tasting samples, which we have here. They are salty, savory, spicy, sour, and sweet. And what we're going to do is we're going to taste them, and then we're going to go into our sense of smell. We're going to go through a couple of different aromatics, and we're going to play what's called the smell game. Then we'll go through your sense of touch, sight, sound, memory, and association, and we'll learn how to combat chemotherapy side effects and learn how to use this information to help us in the long run. Because learning how to cook is a lifelong skill, not just a temporary skill. All right, so sense of taste, what is it, right? That's it. That's your sense of taste, right? It's just found on your tongue. That's the part that gives you your sense of taste. There's actually only 5 flavors that your tongue tastes, and they are salty, savory, spicy, sour, and sweet. And those are the only 5 flavors you taste. Now, people also sometimes call savory umami, but the word is actually in English is savory. And then also there's on sour, the inverse of sour is actually bitter. Sour flavors are caused by a high acidity. Bitter flavors are caused by a high basic quality. And when I say basic, I don't mean pumpkin spice lattes and Ugg boots. I'm talking about, you know, the pH scale kind of stuff. We're talking about basic chemistry here, because cooking is part art, part chemistry, part science, part, you know, philosophy. It's an interesting discipline, right? So let's work through our sense of taste. So our sense of taste is the one that we always talk about. We always think about it. We go out to a restaurant, we get a steak, it's beautifully charred, it smells wonderful, it's presented perfectly, and then you take a big cut out of it, and you bite into it, and everyone says, oh, how did that taste? Does that taste good? Well, yeah, it tastes good. It's steak. Who doesn't like steak, right? Everyone likes steak. But that's just one aspect of the entire culinary experience. It's actually a very limited part, and it's actually the last part of the eating experience because it's the part that goes into your mouth and it requires contact to actually activate, right? So we're going to talk about that in just a second. So let's talk about their 5 flavors. So when you season a recipe, these are the 5 flavors that you season with, and of course these are the 5 flavors that you taste. So the first one that we're going to taste today is salty. We have here just a little bit of kosher salt in a little container here. Real simple tasting demonstration here. I call it Ryan level science, which means that it's real low level science. But what we're going to do here is we're going to get our finger just a little bit wet, get just a little bit of salt on there like a pretzel. Now this is the most important part of the tasting demonstration. What we're going to want to do is we're going to pinch our nose. And the reason that we pinch our nose is to keep the sense of smell from coming into play and just experience it with just our mouth alone. That way we can learn which one of these 5 flavors we like, which one of these we don't like, and see how they work in our mouth. So we have salty first, which is just salt, and we're going to give it a quick taste. So get a little bit of saliva there and move it around. And you would keep your nose pinched, and you just want to basically get some moisture in your mouth and move that salt around and feel it. Now, what would you say about salty flavors? Salty flavors are salty, right? You can go ahead and let go of your nose now. One of the things you'll notice is that your mouth didn't taste like anything before the salt. And once you add the salty to it, it actually, and its function in cooking is to amplify all of the other naturally occurring flavors in a dish. And that's what salt does, and that's what salty flavors do. They lift everything up, right? Like Atlas holding up the world, you know, like the guy with the big thing. He's like, oh, this is a tough gig. Oh, I wish I got dental, but all I get is health insurance, right? But that's what he does. That's what salty does in our cooking. If you ever had a boiled chicken breast or a hamburger without any salt on it, or just raw tofu with nothing else going on in it, a little bit of salt all of a sudden activates all these other flavors, and most important of those being savory flavors, which is our second flavor. But that's what salt does in our dish, is it amplifies everything. It makes it delicious. It helps us to find that this is yummy, and it helps to amplify all the other naturally occurring flavors. And that is your sense of salty. As a matter of fact, sense of salty is such a basic sense that we use the word of the ingredient, the noun, salt, and we just add a Y to it to describe it, right? It's salt-y. It's got a lot of salt because it doesn't taste like anything else but salt. And so that's our sense of salty. So salty flavors amplify all the other flavors, but mostly they activate our second flavor, which is our sense of savory. Now, in our tasting demonstration, we're going to be using soy sauce here. This is just a brewed Kikkoman soy sauce, easy stuff. You can get it off the grocery shelf. So what we're gonna wanna do here is, because it has a smell, we're gonna definitely wanna take a deep breath and pinch our nose like this. Okay, just get a little bit of liquid in there and move it around. I just wanna feel it on your tongue, feel it in your mouth, let it go. And go ahead and swallow it, and don't put too much in there because otherwise it'll be really overpowering. And you want to release your nose. And now all of a sudden, it goes from being a salty, savory, warm, kind of thick, dense liquid in your mouth. It's got this tasty flavor to all of a sudden it's got this weird brewed flavor, beer kind of smell inside your nose, right? Well, that's because soy sauce has a lot of aromatic quality to it, and that's your sense of smell coming into play. What savory flavors do in our cooking is they tell us, this is yummy, this is delicious, I want more of it, right? Think about beef and broccoli or mapo tofu, a grilled steak, baked chicken, barbecued pork, bacon, mushrooms, red wine, green tea, coffee. These are all really, really naturally savory things that taste really good, and they're activated. All the savory flavor is activated by the presence of salt and salty flavors, and that helps to give us that sense of yumminess and deliciousness. Now, this brings us to our third flavor, which is spicy. Spicy flavors also amplify all the other naturally occurring flavors inside of a dish. And what they do is they give you this sense of warmth in your mouth, and they amplify all the other flavors as well. And so let's go ahead and experience that as well. So I've just got a little bit of ground black pepper. Let's go ahead and put that in your finger and get a little bit of moisture in there. Deep breath. Now put that on your tongue. And what you're going to want to do is move it around, get it nice and warm, and just feel it for a minute. Don't swallow, just let it develop its flavor. And what you'll find all of a sudden is that black pepper is actually spicy. You know, people are like, oh, black pepper is not spicy, but black pepper actually is spicy. In function, that's what it does. It creates this warmth. It also amplifies all the other flavors that are inside your mouth already. So go ahead and release. Deep breath. And out through your nose. What you'll notice is that all of a sudden, now it tastes like what you remember black pepper tasting like. So now we've got the saltiness, the savoriness, and the spicy feeling inside of our mouth all at the same time. Well, that's a lot going on, right? So far we've been building flavors, building and building and building and amplifying and amplifying and amplifying, making it bigger and bigger and bigger, right? Well, now we need something that's going to help lighten these flavors. Keep it still tasty in the front, but not leave the residue in our mouth. And so what we're gonna use is sour flavors, which is of course the fourth flavor that you taste. And what it does is it helps to remove the aftertaste and lighten what we call the perceived weight of a dish, okay? And what that means is it helps to remove any residue or remaining flavor inside your mouth. So same thing here, like we do with the soy sauce, we definitely want to pinch our nose because vinegar, this is red wine vinegar, has a distinct flavor to it. You just need like a drop or two in your mouth. Deep breath. Get a little bit in there and move it around. Get it in every corner and give it a good feel. Okay, so Go ahead and swallow it, and then we can release our nose. Woo! That's a vinegar smell, buddy. What sour flavors do, they're acidic flavors. And what these acidic flavors do is they come in, and as you'll notice right away, if you're doing this tasting demonstration at home, what you'll notice right away is that the salty, savory, and spicy flavors are immediately washed out of our mouth. And it's not just that it's liquid going in our mouth to remove it, it's actually the acidity in there is actually helping to cover those extra flavors and to remove the residue. And this forms the first part of palate cleansing that helps to get rid of metallic taste. So far we've built and amplified and made big and delicious. Now we've added sour, and sour flavors make this, acidity and remove that backbite and that overly heavy flavor. So now we need something to bring the whole thing into balance. So how do we do that? Well, we balance all the flavors with the last one, which is sweet. Sweet flavors have no aromatic quality whatsoever, at least sugar doesn't, which is what this is. So give yourself a nice little reward for participating. Get a little bit of sugar in there. Dissolve it on your tongue. And just enjoy that sweet, sugary flavor. Now, one of the things you'll notice right away is that first off, it has no flavor or no smell. But secondly, that all of a sudden that sour flavor that was in your mouth is gone as well. And the way that this works in proper seasoning order is that we have, let's say a basic dish, and we salt, and we always want to season in this method. We use salty, savory, spicy, sour, and sweet in that order. So we add a little salt, we taste it. Does it need more savoriness at this point, or does it still need more salt? And if we need more savoriness, we add more savoriness. And then we add a little bit of spicy, and that amplifies all the other flavors. Now that flavor could become big and heavy. So then we add a little bit of sour flavor to balance that and bring it down. Now remember, guys, when we season, we don't want to just dump whole hog, we don't want to grab a whole thing of pepper like this and go, oh, let's just pour that whole thing in the soup, right? No. What we want to do is just add a little bit of time. And we add a little bit of sweetness to balance out that sour flavor, because you got to remember, sugar and vinegar are brothers and they balance each other out. And the way it works is sour flavors lighten and sweetness comes in, allows the sour flavors to work their magic inside of palate cleansing and lightening a dish, but then they allow you to enjoy the balance and the fullness of the dish and masks the actual sour flavor, allowing it to do its work. So that is your sense of taste. 5 basic things: salty, savory, spicy, sour, and sweet. And those are the 5 things that you taste. If you're playing along at home, we also have, you can take this on some homework going home. There is actually on our website, cookingforchemo.org, there is a flavor exercise where you can season the broth, and it'll allow you to play along at home and learn your preferences and see not just how they taste to you, but also how they work inside of a dish. It's a really important lesson there, and you can do it at home. It takes about 10 minutes. So anyways, that's your sense of taste. So that moves us on to your most important sense in the eating experience, and actually your most important sense on your body overall. That is actually not your sense of sight, but your sense of smell. Humans actually can smell over 1 trillion unique smells and scents. Isn't that crazy? 1 trillion. You can only see a couple million colors. Even though we make a lot of our decisions with our eyes, we actually make a lot of decisions that we don't think about with our sense of smell. So what is our sense of smell, right? It's this guy, it's the schnoz, it's nozzle, right? It's the nose, it's this, right? You breathe in, you breathe out. Little particles come in and they touch the smell receptors, and that gives you information. And so you slowly over time are building a catalog of smells and knowledge inside your brain, right? Because smell is the strongest sense tied to memory and also association. Talk about that in just a little bit. Your sense of smell does a lot of stuff for you, right? Not only does it help you smell, the air, smell roses, smell perfume, smell barbecue, it also helps us smell bad smells, things that are gross, things that aren't good, like, ew, who wants to smell dog farts? They just smell bad, right? No one wants to smell these things because they smell bad. Well, our sense of smell actually does a lot of stuff for us in the eating department, right? So what it does is, think about it like this, right? If you're driving down the street and let's just say you've eaten a 3 or 4 course breakfast and you're stuffed to the brim, and yet you drive by a barbecue place and they've got pulled pork grilling, it's barbecue and it's slowly smoking. You smell that hickory, you smell that charcoal, you smell all that good stuff just wafting through there. I don't know about you guys, but me, I'm like, oh, how do you smell that? That's barbecue. Let's go get some barbecue. Oh, it just smells so good, right? Because the smell's wafting through the air and it goes right into your nose. You're like, oh, that smells so good. It's such a good smell. Oh yeah, I want to eat that, right? That's that good smell, right? And it builds our appetite from a distance, right? Because that's what our sense of smell does in the eating relationship. It tells us there's something good, there's something tasty, something neat's happening over there. Let's go eat it, right? You smell bacon or sausage or pancakes, you smell hash browns, you smell any of that good stuff grilling or cooking in your house or anywhere around, or your neighbors, right? They've got their barbecue set out and you're having leftovers, you know, the Salisbury steak and the banquet meal. You're like, oh, why do I have to eat this? And then they're grilling burgers down the street and you get that charcoal with you. Ooh, that smells good. I wonder what Brent is eating, right? That's our sense of smell. That's what it does. It tells us all kinds of great stuff. It tells us good things, and it also tells us bad things. You know, we're all smart, wonderful people. We've never done something this dumb or as stupid as I've done before in my life, right? Let's imagine for a second we have our refrigerator, and you're like, I'm going to get a glass of milk, right? And you look, and it's August 22nd, and you see the date says, oh, let's say August 10th. You go, okay, 8/10, that was like 12 days ago. That's about 2 weeks. But you know what? This milk has been in the back of the fridge in the coldest part. It's never been opened. And then you grab it and you pull your thing out there and you look at it. You go, okay, well, you do the inspection. You look around and you go, okay, looks okay, right? And then you kind of look at it and go, you check the viscosity. Does this look bad? Okay, passes the visual inspection. And then you kind of look left and right. Make sure no one's going to watch you do something as dumb as you know that this is. You unscrew the cap, and then you don't do what they told you to do in science class. You lightly waft the air. No, no, no. You take your nose and you go, oh, that's some bad milk. Right? And if you've ever done this before, you can remember this immediately. It lights up your brain. You go, danger, danger, danger. This isn't any good. Oh, get this out of here. Right? And maybe you were hungry before, you were thirsty before, but now as soon as you smell that expired milk, you're nauseous, you're sick, you're not feeling good anymore, and you sure as heck don't want to eat anymore, because that's the other thing that our sense of smell does, right? It tells us there's good smells that build our appetite, but it also can tell us that there's bad smells that diminish our appetite. And so we want to be conscious of this in our cooking. And I know it's going to sound silly, but we want to lean into the good smells and lean away from the bad smells, because, and I'm going to say something incredibly simple here, but it might even be controversial to you. People eat what tastes good to them. They don't eat what doesn't taste good to them. Why fight upstream? Make food that tastes good to you, not food that tastes bad to you. Because what we want to do here, and especially what we focus on at Cooking for Chemo, is fighting systematic starvation. And that comes in when, you know, let's say you've eaten breakfast and lunch and you miss dinner, and you do that 3 or 4 days a week, right? Okay, maybe the first 2 days aren't so bad, but third, fourth, fifth day, you're going to start losing weight. You're going to start lowering your energy, and you're going to start burning through your extra calories and your extra reserves, because you're going to start starving. And systematic starvation is a real problem. And that's what we really focus on here at Cooking for Chemo. We want to build your appetite, not diminish your appetite. And so we're going to do our next little example here to reinforce this sense of smell. And we're going to play a game called the Smell Game. It's one of my favorite games. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to play along at home. And what we're going to do is we're going to grab a couple herbs and spices. You could even do this in your refrigerator. You could do this with anything really, but it works easiest to start with herbs, okay? So I have ground cumin. And what you're going to do first is you're going to smell it. You're going to evaluate the aromatic quality, almost like you're tasting wine, right? Not that anyone actually tastes wine. They're kind of like, oh yeah, this is great, fantastic. So I can drink all this, right? All of it goes down. Oh no, we're just spitting. Oh no, I'll swallow it, right? Because we're not tasting it, we're drinking it. So, but here we're going to just smell it. And don't inhale too hard, because you will huff in the spices and sneeze on camera, because I have done that before, which is really funny to watch. So anyway, so what we do is we give it a smell, and then we say 3 questions. Do I like it? Yes or no. Not, I'm in the middle. It's just yes or no. Okay? So cumin, yes, I like it. Part 2, what does it remind me of? So give it a sniff. It reminds me of chili or tacos or hummus, Indian food, curries, things like that. Part 3 is, if I smelled this cooking in my house, would this build my appetite and make me hungry, or would it diminish my appetite and make me nauseous or unhungry? And so for me, if I smelled this, I'd be like, yes, that's exciting, right? So cumin, yes, reminds me of hummus, tacos, and Indian food. And yes, it would build my appetite. Okay. Next one is ground cinnamon. So let's play the smell game again, right? So, okay, I do like it. It reminds me of like Christmas, Thanksgiving time when you've got like the brooms, the pine cones, and all the scented things that are going to be coming out in the next couple of days, I'm sure, because it's August and it's almost fall. It also reminds me of like Danish orange rolls or cinnamon rolls, cinnamon toast crunch, things like that, right? And then if I smelled this cooking in my house, it would build my appetite. I'd be like, ooh, some kind of good pastries coming and I'm excited, right? Okay, so far we've got 2 likes and they build my appetite. Now we got my third one here, oregano leaves. Now, one of the things that happens inside your house is that you tend to carry things that you like already. So you're gonna find when you play this game at home that you already like a lot of these things, but you may be surprised you actually don't like the smell of some of these things. So now we've got oregano. So so I know that I like the way it tastes in cooking, but I'll tell you that when I smell it here, I actually don't like the way it smells. And it kind of reminds me of fresh cut grass or old leaves, something kind of stale and damp and moldy. And then I would say that if this was cooking in my house, even though I've said all that stuff, just because I remember what it tastes like, I know that it would build my appetite. But if it just smelled how it smelled when it was dried, I know that it wouldn't build my appetite. And so this is an important game to play because this helps you at your house sit down and decide what do you like, what do you not like. And this is where a tasting journal comes into play. A tasting journal can be something as simple as just a little notebook that you carry in your pocket, right? Just one of these little pocket notebooks. You can write down, what did I eat? Did I like it? Did I not? What did it remind me of? And would I eat it again? And what could I do to make it better, right? You can also download free tasting journal pages at my website and print them out yourself, right? And you can go through and use the worksheets. And what this allows you to do is keep a tangible, trackable way to decide what you like and what you don't like, so that when you go and work with your dietitian, they can say, well, you need these nutrients. And then they can make suggestions of what you can incorporate in your diet. And then you can say, well, I don't like the way this tastes. And then they can find other things that meet those nutrient requirements and help you to eat what you like and get the nutrients that you need in your diet, right? That's the whole idea here, because we want to fight off systematic starvation and we want to allow everybody to eat and enjoy their quality of life. So aromatics, your sense of smell, what they do is they build your appetite or diminish your appetite from a distance. You don't have to physically touch them like your sense of taste to know if you're going to like it or not. It can permeate through your entire house. It can go across a block. If you live next to a barbecue place, sometimes that smell can go for miles and miles around, right? I live in St. Louis. We got a lot of breweries. A lot of our city smells like beer cooking, right? That smells like cooking beer, and the whole city can smell like it. And if you like that smell, you're like, oh yeah, I love that smell. Or if you hate that smell, like, oh gosh, I hate that smell. It's horrible, right? And this can build our appetite or diminish it. And we want to take care with it to use it to build our appetite and keep the smells that we like and avoid the smells that we don't like. So that's your sense of smell in a nutshell. The last thing you need to know about your sense of smell is this idea called pungency. Pungency isn't, is this a good smell? Is this a bad smell? That's subjective quality. What we're talking about is concentration of particles, okay? So cumin is very pungent. It's got a lot of smell. Kimchi is very pungent, has a lot of smell. But oregano is probably moderate. Basil's probably moderate. Cinnamon's on the higher end of pungency. You know, rotting trash would be high. Roses, daisies, you know, ham, uncooked cold ham is low pungency. Not a lot of super smell. You don't walk in a building and know that there's a piece of deli ham sitting on your counter, right? This pungency is the concentration of smell, not the quality of it, whether you like it or not, right? That's a whole different thing. What we need to be conscious of with pungency is that sometimes overly strong smells can induce nausea in people. And we'll talk about ways that we avoid nausea later in the class. And that's just something to keep in mind and think about. So this brings us to our next sense, which is our sense of touch. And of course, we explain our sense of touch very simply with a very nice musical display, as I say. I feat of strength and talent. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. And now Chef Ryan will demonstrate touch with his 2 fingers. Da 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 da. All right, so that's your sense of touch. Your sense of touch is really your kinesthetic sense, and what it is something touches your finger, like your hand or something else, or any part of your skin, and because there's physical contact, you can tell that something is touching you, right? This comes into play with eating in a bunch of different ways. Number 1 is contact, okay? Contact tells you there's something there. And when you're there, that contact can be translated into textures, right? Is this crunchy? Is this abrasive? Is this soft and soupy? Is this toasty? Is this sandwichy? Is this ricey, right? How does this feel in our mouth? Because textures tell us how we feel about food. And that helps us to understand what we're eating and how we should feel in the moment, right? If I don't feel good and I'm sick, what do I want? I want soft, soupy, easy to digest textures and flavors, right? Now, angry? No, you can't be. You're eating chips and salsa. You're like, I'm so mad. I'm having fun. Chips and salsa. Do the chips and salsa dance, right? That's what we're doing, okay? Because crunchy textures tell us this is fun, this is interesting. They light up the pleasure centers of our brain. And as humans, we're always looking for new and interesting experiences. It's how we learn, it's how we adapt, it's how we develop. Well, our sense of touch doesn't just tell us that there's food in there or what the texture is. It also helps to identify temperature. Is this hot? Is this cold? Is this lukewarm? Is this in between, right? What's with coffee, by the way? It's really good cold and it's really good hot. Have you ever had lukewarm coffee? It's not any good. And for some reason, the flavor's all weird, the texture's all wrong, it just freaks you out, right? But that's our sense of touch coming into play with other things, right? And we knew it was hot, we knew it was cold, and for some reason it tastes good or bad to us depending on the temperature. So that's your sense of touch. And your sense of touch also comes into play in mouth sores. Those are activated by your sense of touch. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. So then, of course, we also have your 4th sense, right? Your sense of sight. We're using our sense of sight right now. You're watching me talk to you, jump up and down, do a little dance, do a little song, do a little thing for you, right? We're singing, we're dancing, we're having fun, right? That's your sense of sight. It also helps you to decide, is this interesting? Is this not interesting? Do I want to see more of it? Do I not? Humans are unbelievably visual, right? We make a lot of our decisions visually. You know, is that person trustworthy? Is that person blank? Do these jeans make my butt look fat? Is probably the best synopsis of your sense of sight. Not, is my butt fat? Do I look good in these jeans? But does the jeans make my butt look fat? Not subjective, is not quality. Is it subjective? Does it, right? So that's what we need to think about with our sense of sight. Well, our sense of sight can also help to build or diminish our appetite as well, right? Perfect examples of how humans are unbelievably visual is that we go to art museums. We hang art on our walls. We paint our walls in our kitchens different colors to keep it interesting. For example, I wear this bright green chef jacket. So it tells you that I'm fun and interesting and fresh and interesting things are gonna happen. Because if I showed up in a white chef jacket, you'd be like, oh, he's very, he's gonna be like one of those normal chefs who's like, is that how you cook the crab? I'm so crabby about how you cook that crab. No, when you show up in a green chef jacket, people are like, oh, this guy's fun and interesting and friendly. It also helps that I smile a lot, right? These visual cues tell us a lot of information. It helps us to make decisions. For example, you know, we can see things and decide whether or not it's good or bad from a distance, and especially when this comes to food. So let's use McDonald's as an example. You go, you know, I've been on a diet for about a year now. I've been losing a lot of weight, and one of the things you do is you go, okay, I have to count my calories. So I have X amount of calories for breakfast, and then you go to, let's say, McDonald's because you're getting an Egg McMuffin, 310 calories. And you're in the line, and then you see it. The digital sign, right? Big piece of machinery, big LCD screen, or LED screen, or whatever it is. And it's got all these beautiful pictures on it, right? It's not the old menus that you had to flip or print, or, you know, the old boards that had hamburger, 99 cents, right? It's literally a whole interactive experience. You go there in the morning and you're like, I'm getting an egg McMuffin, I'm not buying anything else. And then you see it, the coffee. And they don't just show you, hey, have a cup of coffee. No, it's a slowly cascading ebony droplets of onyx colored goodness, right? These dark jeweled droplets of heaven cascading out of a carafe into a cup. And then it doesn't just sit there in the cup. It sensuously and playfully steams out of that cup with the aroma molecules calling to you. Yes, I need this coffee. This coffee, I need it. And if you've never had the coffee, you don't know what it tastes like. You don't know how hot it is. You don't know if it smells good, but you see it and you think, yes, this looks so good. And next thing you know, you're buying coffee. Or you go to the movie theater, right? And you go to see a movie. We have an experience with our eyes and our ears, but nothing else, right? We experience these stories and things. And in the beginning of a movie, they don't give you a paragraph explaining the synopsis of the, you know, of the previews, right? It's not a paragraph that says Harrison Ford in zombie galactic laser battle shooting aliens and robots with an attractive lady as his co-partner. No, it's Harrison Ford squatting behind something. Big explosions in space. Bang, boom, bomb, right? Zombie space aliens coming to get you. It's the best 30 seconds of the entire movie combined and smashed down into 30 seconds, right? And then you go, hey, that movie looks good. You should go see that movie. That movie could be the worst movie ever made. It could have a horrible plot. The dialogue could be jaded and stilted. It could be horrible. The special effects could be really bad, except for those 30 seconds. But you think to yourself, hey, I've seen this. Therefore, it could be really good, because we make all these decisions with our eyes. So humans are highly visual. And when we're cooking, we want to use this visual ability to make interesting colored dishes that build our appetite from a distance by seeing them and reinforcing the interest in it. So here's an example of something interesting. So we've got a caprese salad. It's got grape tomatoes. We've got mozzarella cheese and basil. It's red, it's white, it's green, it's interesting, right? We don't know how well it's seasoned or how well it tastes, but when we see it from a distance, we say, yeah, I know I like those things. I want to eat that. So far what we've talked about is our sense of taste, which only activates on touch. Sense of smell, right? It activates from a distance when the smell molecules hit it. We can build our appetite with the distance from your sense of smell. We've got our sense of touch, which also activates when it's physically in contact with the object. Tells us about textures, tells us how to feel about a food, right? Is this hot? Is this cold? Now we've got our sense of sight. Our sense of sight is the fourth sense, and it allows us to also get information from a distance. So two of these senses, right, our sense of smell and our sense of sight, can build our appetite from a distance. So think about using fun, interesting colors in your food, subbing out the boring, bland stuff, and maybe doing different ways of cooking it and presenting it, different ways of cutting your vegetables, different colors that make it interesting to you, the cancer fighter, not to me, the caregiver, but allows us to have these new experiences and keeps it interesting. So that brings us to our fifth sense, which is our sense of sound. You're listening to Ryan Public Radio. All Ryan, all the time, right? This is our sense of sound. It uses our ears, and it is the third sense that allows us to make decisions about objects and items and data from a distance. We don't have to be in contact with it. We perceive it from a distance, right? So that's our sense of sound, okay? And our sense of sound comes into the eating relationship in a bunch of different ways. Number one is it sets the mood, right? We hear music a lot of times when we go out to eat, and that music tells us what to expect, right? Number two, cooking uses a lot of noises. Food itself, when it is cooking, makes a lot of noises. Bubbling, boiling, simmering, sauteing, bang, bang, boom, pop, sizzle, swash, right? These are all different noises that are accompanied by food, cooking, or eating. You know, you go out to a restaurant, ting, 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 pong, 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 kong, 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 ting, 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 ah, ha, 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 right? All these different noises that we hear when we're eating. And what happens is we slowly begin to associate these different sounds while we're eating, and it helps us to know what to expect and to set the environment. Well, in addition to this, we can use our sense of sound actually as a training tool. And you've actually already been trained in a bunch of different ways and you don't know it. Think about this. You go out to the Mexican restaurant, what do you hear, right? You hear mariachi music. Okay, you go to the Irish restaurant, you might hear your Irish pub, you'll hear Irish music, right? You go to the Chinese restaurant, if it's a sit-down place, you'll hear classical Chinese music. The Japanese plays Japanese, the Greek plays Greek, Italian plays Italian, Russian plays Russian, so on and so forth, right? Because we're setting the environmental standard for the area. It sets the mood and the tone. But if you go to the Mexican restaurant and you hear Chinese music playing, you're gonna be really confused. You're gonna be like, wait, am I getting burritos? Am I getting General Tso's chicken, sesame chicken? What's happening here? I really wanted fajitas, but now I think that I'm getting some egg rolls. What is happening here, right? Because you're going to be confused all of a sudden. That's because our sense of sound has been trained over time to expect music in conjunction with a restaurant and an environment. And we can actually use this as a training tool inside of our cooking and inside of our eating, right? So, for example, my mom, love her to death, bless her heart. When I cook, I always listen to old crooner music, vocal jazz, Ella Fitzgerald, Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr. Those are my guys, right? I believe that my food tastes better when My Funny Valentine is playing softly over my speakers in my house. My marinara sauce just comes out so much better when that is playing inside my house. It's a thing. I believe it. It helps me cook better. Well, this translated into when I was cooking for my mom 3 meals a day, to me playing this music for about an hour before I would feed her every single time. So at 7 in the morning you hear, My Funny Valentine, sweet comic Valentine. And then my mom's going, hey, I think we're about to eat, right? And still to this day, my mom just came into town. And she came into town, I was playing Frank Sinatra. She saw me, she heard the music. She immediately thought, hey, let's go get some spaghetti and meatballs or some Indian food or some manicotti. Let's go eat, right? She sees me and still to this day hears that music, triggered. Let's eat, because Ryan plus this music equals food. And we can use this as a training tool slowly over time to associate any kind of music or any kind of sound with eating, right? Think about the dinner bell, right? You know, the old, they're out on the prairie, ding, ling, 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 dinner's time, come get yo, ding, 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 right? You're ringing the bell and people know, oh, it's time to eat. We can use this with any form of music, any kind of sound, anything. We can use this as a system to build an appetite from a distance and to set the environment and the expectation that food is coming. And your sense of sound also comes into play because crunchy textures also vibrate your ear. Crunchy itself is not just a texture, crunchy is also an onomatopoeia. So we experience crunchy textures not just with touch, but also with our sense of sound. So, looks like I got a little more time here. So, these are our 5 senses as we use them traditionally, right? Taste, smell, touch, sight, and sound. So we have also our 6th sense that comes into play, which is memory and association. And this is going to really bleed into loss of appetite a lot of it. And we're going to talk about that right here in just a second. So, loss of appetite. Let's focus on that. How do we combat loss of appetite? Well, we've really spent the last 45 minutes actually discussing loss of appetite. We needed to lay the groundwork on how do you understand food and flavor so that then we can learn what we like and what we don't like, okay? So memory and association is tied into loss of appetite a lot, so we have to kind of talk about them together. So what happens during chemo is that what we remember food tasting like and what it tastes like now, they don't equal each other all the time, right? Sometimes they're different, right? You go in to get a Big Mac, and you take a bite out of it, and it tastes like a chocolate donut, and you're gonna be like, whoa, this is what I remember a chocolate donut tasting like, not a cheeseburger, right? And you're gonna be freaked out, and you're not gonna wanna eat it. Unless you really like chocolate Long Johns or chocolate donuts as much as you like a hamburger, and you're like, heck yeah, let's eat that, right? But we need to know about that, we need to think about it, because if we have an expectation of this and we get this, slowly over time, we're gonna start feeling exhausted and disheartened because we won't understand what we like and what we don't like. And that will start leading to loss of appetite and most importantly, a disinterest in food and the eating experience. And so what we do is we need to relearn our memories and our associations. So when we have a craving for something, we wanna think about, is it a cheeseburger that I really want? Or is it protein and fat, right? Or is it carbohydrates? Or is it vitamins? What is it in this craving that I'm actually craving? And think about that as a way to start discerning what you really want. And part two of that is that we need to relearn these memories and associations, right? So if I remember a cheeseburger tasting like blank, but now it tastes like a chocolate donut, let's taste a chocolate donut so we can say what that tastes like now. This is where our tasting journal really comes into play. And what you can do is keep a log of what you liked and what you didn't like. Did you like the salty, savory, spicy, sour, sweet? Did you like the smell? Was it the touch? Was it the sight? Was it the sound? What was it that you liked? So we can start relearning our palate. And we want to go through playing the smell game and tasting and trying lots of different simple things and then more complicated things, because we can then use association to build a network of foods that we like. So for example, if you taste broccoli now and you don't like the way that broccoli tastes now, odds are you're probably not going to like the way that cauliflower tastes, or spinach, or kale, or cabbages, anything in that kind of vein, in that kind of smell and flavor profile family. We can kind of start learning through the ripple effect as it spreads out and make decisions on, well, I might like this or I might not, right? Because we can think about, was it the taste of broccoli you didn't like, or was it the stinky, pungent smell? Because if it's the smell, those foods that I just labeled off are what you're not going to like about them, is the actual set. So we want to rebuild this memory and association. And what we can do is we can start by doing an exercise to show how strong our sense of smell is, right? So we talked about the spoiled milk, and I did a big, presentation and jumping up and down smelly thing about how it smells bad or how it doesn't smell good and it makes you nauseous, right? We can also feel that feeling and relive that feeling every time we smell that, right? We have this reaction and we can smell it and remember it in our brain. We can also smell and remember good things, right? So let's all close our eyes for a second and think about Thanksgiving, right? What does Thanksgiving smell like to you? Not what does it look like, not what does it taste like, not who's there, how does it make you feel? Close your eyes and really remember what Thanksgiving smells like, right? Like turkey and stuffing, ooh, and mashed potatoes and gravy and sweet potatoes and sage, right? All these different smells. And as you think about how they smell, you can easily recall also what they look like, right? And then what they taste like. Like my mouth is watering just thinking about how much I like turkey, right? Think about these things, okay? Because your memory is your strongest sense tied, your memory is tied strongest to your sense of smell, right? Because we smell these things and then we remember them, and then we can associate other smells and tastes with other things. It helps us make quicker decisions. Think of your memory like long-term storage, and your associations as quick access, like little notes that you would put on top of a piece of paper if you need to remember an entire piece of paper, right? Just, what is this about? Okay, the synopsis, okay? Now let's keep our eyes closed and let's think about your grandfather. Think about your favorite grandfather. What did he, not what did he look like, not what, how did he make you feel, not what did he sound like, but what did he smell like, right? Which is a weird thing for some people to think about. A lot of times people laugh when I say, what did he smell like, right? But my grandfather smelled like Old Spice, Pert Plus, old motor oil, a carbureted tractor, fresh cut grass, and all kinds of woodworking projects and things like that, right? He had this smell to him, and when I smell this old garage smell, still to this day, I'm like, oh, Grandpa, is that you? But I know Grandpa's been gone for a long time, because our sense of smell is so powerful. It can transport us back instantly to these previous moments that we had in our life. And so we can go ahead and open our eyes, because that's how strong our sense of memory and our sense of association is. It gets logged forever, and it just gets dredged up. And there's certain things that remind us of things, and we have to relearn what these smells remind us of and what we associate with. And that's how we can overcome the fact that this is not aligned with this, and that then we can make this expectation go away and make this the new expectation and make them work for you. So how do we use that to address loss of appetite? Well, we address loss of appetite very simply. What we need to do is we need to rebuild what I call the romance with food. It's a new way I've decided to describe this, and I hope you guys will really enjoy this. So think about building romance like the way you go on a date, right? When you're a guy, you got to set the mood, you got to set the tone, you got to make the perfect environment, you know, because you're trying to woo your partner, right? You're trying to make them like you as much as you like them, right? So what do? We set music, okay? So we use our sense of sound to set the expectation, right? You know, you could be classical, it could be Dr. Dre, it could be Hank Williams Jr., it could be dance music, it could be whatever you want to do and to use to set that mood and set that tone. Just use it regularly, and of course, make sure it's something that you like. So set the mood and the tone, because if you're cooking and you hear it, or let's say you're the caregiver and you're cooking and the cancer patient hears the music, it's not going to be right away, oh, this person's cooking, but slowly over time, subconsciously, you'll begin to know and understand that that sound means food is coming, right? Think about it as the dinner bell, the subconscious dinner bell. The next, we want to use beautifully smelling aromatics and herbs and spices to build your appetite from a distance. Things that smell good to me, like bacon, onions, mushrooms, chicken, garlic, butter, olive oil. These are things to me that smell so good, like rosemary and mushrooms smells unbelievable, or garlic, oh, and soy sauce. Oh, these are two of my favorite smells, right? When I smell those things, I immediately get hungry, right? So we have our sense of sound. We have music playing in the background telling us, hey, food's coming. We have these slowly wafting smells permeating the house. It goes, it's time to get hungry, right? And if you're not the one cooking, you're sitting there and you're like, oh, I smell something good, right? Because these two things are building our appetite from a distance. Then we have our third sense that comes into play when we're coming to eat, right? It's our sense of sight. If we use interesting colors and variations in the preparation method, we can have meals that are interesting and fun to look at, right? So for example, if you're making beef stew, right? You cut your little beef and your beef chunks in there, you use stew meat or whatever, and you cook it, right? You tend to use like brown potatoes and yellow onions and regular sliced rondelle carrots, right? Little rounds. Well, don't do that. Switch it up a little bit. Use some red onion, right? Makes it purple and interesting, bright, it pops. Use larger chunks of celery, like maybe an inch long and sliced in half so they look like little sticks. Take baby carrots, cut them vertically so that they are two big round pieces so they got a lot of color, right? A lot of texture. Use a red onion, use a red potato or a yellow potato. It's different than a brown potato so it pops out of the sauce and the color, right? And if you want a darker colored sauce, you could add just a little bit of soy sauce to it to make it a darker brown color so those other colors pop, right? Think about it like interior decorating. You know, I painted my kitchen blue because I love the cool feeling that it gives to my kitchen, you know? I use a green chef's jacket because it tells you I'm fun and outgoing, and this is going to be a weird, wacky presentation. Use your sense of sight to make interesting looking food so that when you look at it, you go, oh yeah, that looks good. I'm not saying you got to build these, chef level towers of food with different plating layers and mashed potatoes at the bottom and a perfectly drizzled sauce, or make a steak into a robin's egg. No, we're just saying use interesting colors and presentation methods to make it look interesting to you, right? Then we've got our three senses that build appetite from a distance. Now we need to use our two senses that we experience with contact. So now we have our sense of touch. Our sense of touch, when we put that food in our mouth, we perceive the texture before we perceive the taste typically, right? And that sense of touch helps us to know how to feel about it. Am I not feeling good? Is it soft and soupy? Is it crunchy and interesting? Is there something happening here that keeps me wanting to eat it, right? Does it make me feel good or make me feel bad? And that's what we want to think about with that sense of touch. And then the last thing is your sense of taste. And it's all about balancing those 5 flavors to the cancer fighter's preferences, not myself, the caregiver, right? Salty, savory, spicy, sour, and sweet, okay? We want to balance those to their preferences. Do they like things extra savory? Do they like things extra sweet? Do they like things extra spicy? Do they like things extra salty or less salty? Are they really salt sensitive? Don't put a ton of salt in there if you're salt sensitive, right? That is your sense of taste. Your sense of taste is the kiss. It's the goodnight kiss at the end of the perfect date where your heart's fluttering and everything's gone right and you get that kiss and oh, it's just magical and everything comes together in that exact moment. And that is how we should start thinking about cooking when we have cancer or when we're a caregiver. That's how we want to do it. We want to build that romance, because maybe not everything works all the time. But over time, these systems, these 5 pieces, and the 6th piece being our memory and association, will come together and provide a system for getting more nutrients into us and avoiding the starvation. And to that effect, we want to also always remind ourselves to eat one more bite, right? Almost like a personal trainer is like, do the crunches. I've already done 10 more crunches. Do 10 more. I can't do 10 more. Do 10 more. Oh my gosh, why are you yelling at me, right? They're making you do 10, 20, 30 extra sit-ups and push-ups, right, to push your body past its natural ability. Same thing with when we eat. We want to get that extra spoonful, eat an extra bite, extra sip of liquid. Push ourselves to get those extra nutrients so that we can avoid cachexia and the systematic starvation. And that, my friends, is how you combat loss of appetite. We use that as an entire system to combat loss of appetite. And we build the romance with our food, and we build smells and sounds and sights, touch and taste from distance and then locally to make beautiful, delicious food. Because let me tell you, if you make beautiful, delicious food, you're gonna wanna eat it. All right, so that brings us to metallic tastes. So metallic tastes are another really big, not so fun part of cancer treatments, right? Everything tastes like metal, everything tastes like lithium 9-volt battery, everything just tastes weird. So the way that we combat metallic tastes is through palate cleansing. And palate cleansing is actually built into proper seasoning order of salty, savory, spicy, sour, and sweet. So if you're following along in that proper order and you're balancing your dishes and seasoning them correctly, you'll be already palate cleansing them with the vinegar and the sugar already. Now, that's the first method, which is the vinegar and sugar palate cleansing method. And the way that works is in the middle of cooking in our seasoning, we'll add vinegar and sugar to the middle, like of a 1-pot dish or a sauce, or something like that, like soup, stews, sauces, that type of stuff, right? We're not putting vinegar and sugar on top of sandwiches because that would be weird, right? It can go into the sauce that goes onto the sandwich, but not directly onto the sandwich, right? And so we cook that in, and we allow that to cook for just a little bit because it gets rid of that overly vinegary taste, allows the sugar to coat it, and allows it all to cook together and make a beautiful taste and smell. That will help to remove the metallic taste as you're eating. The second part is citric acids. These are lemons, limes, oranges, blood oranges, grapefruits, tangerines, clementines, mandarins, etc., etc. Any kind of citrus fruit will work. They have citric acid, which is an acid, and they also have sugar in them. You can squeeze these on top of your food, like lime on top of tacos, lemon on top of tabbouleh, or lemon inside of your hummus, right? Or lemonade, for example. But you can also use sour tasting fruit juice or fruits to do this as well. So like cranberries, sour apples, sour cherries, so on and so forth. What we're looking for here is something that has more acidity in it than it has any other flavor, because what will happen is that sugar will balance out that tartness or that sour flavor. Sour plus sweet is tart. That's what that flavor actually is, of the two things working together. It's an acidity with the sugar. The two working together make a tart flavor. That's why lemons and limes and all those other things are tart. But they also work great as a palate cleanser. I'm going to give you a quick recipe here, a great palate cleansing citric acid recipe. It's my lemonade recipe. It's real simple. You need 2 cups of lemon juice. You need a cup of Splenda or sugar. And then you need a pinch of salt. And what you need is a 1-gallon pitcher. You put all that into a 1-gallon pitcher. You fill it with cool water and you mix it. Super, super tart. Touch of sweetness. Really great at cleansing metallic taste. And a little bit of salt in there also helps it to be full of electrolytes and also helps to bring out that lemony flavor. Now, a lot of salt, just literally a pinch in a whole gallon. That's all you need. Okay, so the third part of that is the fresh herb method. Fresh herb method is 4 distinct herbs that work really great for cleansing your palate. They are mint, cilantro, Italian flatleaf parsley, and basil. And of course, there are tons more, but those are the 4 that are easy to get a hold of here in an American market. So what do you use in different situations? So cilantro perfectly goes into salsa, right? It also pairs really well with lime. Italian flatleaf parsley pairs really well with lemon, right? So those are 2 palate cleansers you can use together. Basil goes with tomatoes and a lot of other stuff, right, to taste really good. And of course, we have our mint. Mint can be used in everything. Anything with a light flavor, you want it to have that nice thing. You can also use mint teas and peppermint a lot of different ways. My wife's grandmother's marinara recipe actually called for mint instead of basil, which was an interesting change, but actually really good. And we can experiment with this. And how we use that is we just take the fresh herb, the leaves of the fresh herbs, we chop, 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 chop until it's nice and fine. And then we either sprinkle it on top of the hot dish or we mix it into the sauce right before we serve. And we want to make sure that it gets lightly steamed for at least 30 seconds because we want the natural yeast and bacteria to get killed because it can cause digestional issues if you don't. So you just want to be cautious with that. So if you're having a lot of nausea and stuff, don't use the fresh herb method. Use other things unless you cook it straight in there. So that's metallic taste in a nutshell. So the next part is called mouth sores. Mouth sores, what are they? Oh, they're these little tiny mouth ulcers. They almost look like oysters in your mouth. And we can't cure them with cooking, but we can accommodate for them. And the way we want to think about mouth sores is they're like the gatekeeper, right? They keep you on and out of, it basically keeps the food out of the mouth, right? It's like, none shall pass, right? And what we want to do is we want to think about them as our overly sensitive friend that we can't say anything around, okay? Because they get angry at everything you say. So you just keep your mouth shut, you just smile, right? That's how you want to handle mouth sores. You want to keep from irritating them or agitating them. And so what we want to think about when we cook for mouth sores is texture, right? Texture number one. If you got really bad mouth sores, soft, soupy, ice creamy textures. That's what you want to stick to. Nothing abrasive, nothing hard, nothing crunchy, nothing that's going to agitate the mouth sores, nothing that's going to give them an excuse to be angry, okay? That's what we want to make sure we never do, is we never give them the excuse to be angry. We want to make sure that they are always happy and always in a good space, right? So think about the texture, right? What is the texture? Is it going to agitate the mouth sores or not? Number two is heat. You want to avoid something that's overly hot and overly spicy. And I always talk about putting spicy flavors in there. I'm not saying you need to make everything a habanero chilies. I'm saying is a little black pepper goes a long way, right? We want to think about spiciness. How spicy is this? The warm flavor inside your mouth is actually caused by the chemicals inside of the spicy flavors interacting with your skin, creating the sensation of heat, right? So we don't want to use overly spicy things. So no habaneros, no jalapenos and things like that. Nothing that's going to burn your mouth. Same thing with temperature. You don't want to go get coffee that if you spilled it on your lap, you could sue somebody over and put it in your mouth, right? We want to stay to warm, cool, cold, and frozen temperatures until those mouth sores go away, okay? Then we want to keep our mouth very hydrated, keep it moist all the time, sip liquids regularly like lemonade and other things that can help with metallic tastes. And we want to keep our mouth moist. And what happens is, when they dry out, they crack and they blister and they bleed and they suck. It's horrible. And I would recommend talking to your dentist. They know a lot about these mouth rinses and things that can keep the moisture content high in your mouth and keep them from getting worse. So that brings us to nausea, everyone's least favorite side effect. Oh, nausea, right? Nausea is one of those ones. There's so many different types of nausea, right? We can have smell-induced nausea. We can have motion-induced nausea, right? We can have upset stomach nausea caused by we ate something wrong, okay? There's all kinds of different nausea. But what we focus on here is we focus on smell-induced nausea, right? So the way that we avoid smell-induced nausea is by keeping that tasting journal. And what it allows us to do is it allows us to keep track of everything that we're eating and what we like and what we don't like. And we want to keep nausea from triggering. We want to avoid overly pungent smells. And we want to avoid anything that makes us nauseous when we smell it. So if it makes you nauseous, don't cook it. Don't keep it in your house. Don't eat it, right? If you don't like tuna salad sandwiches because they make you nauseous, get them out of your house. Do not eat them. Do not have them. If kimchi is making you nauseous, it makes you sick, don't eat it. It's very simple. If you don't like it, don't do it, right? Don't put your finger in an electrical socket. It keeps electrocuting me. Don't put your finger in the electrical socket, right? So we want to think about that. And what we want to do is use aromatic herbs and ingredients and smells of food that we like and smell good to us. If we're having nausea already, we want to stick to simple, easy dishes, use soothing herbs like ginger, mint, lemon, lime, things that help to settle your stomach, right, when your stomach is upset. And we want to use aromatic ingredients that smell nice, taste nice to us, and make us feel comfortable. Rosemary, parsley, thyme, bay leaves, sage, all those things smell great and they build your appetite from a distance, and they help with a sore stomach, okay? The other thing we want to think about is our medications. So if you have two medications, usually it's a severe and a light day. If you're having a severe nausea, or you're going to have severe nausea, take the severe day nausea. Take the light day nausea when you don't have any, but keep it in you so it keeps it from happening. And the reason we want to do this is because nausea can cause starvation, and it can also cause dehydration, right? And if you don't take those medications, you can literally not eat and you can literally not drink, and that's not good for you. You won't last a long time like that, right? My mom is a nurse, and she decided that she didn't need her severe day nausea, and she was just going to take her light day. And she actually ended up fainting in the shower because she was dehydrated. Luckily, I was there to catch her and get her out of the shower before she hurt herself. But that's how important this is that literally nausea can incapacitate you. It can make you nauseous, it can make you faint, it can make you dizzy, it can cause all kinds of side effects like dehydration and starvation. So we want to do everything possible to accommodate for that and make sure that we don't have that going on. Now, the last side effect that we talk about in this presentation is inability to chew and swallow. This happens when you don't have teeth or you don't have salivary glands. And what happens is, let's say you don't have teeth. So we'll start there in building this process. And what we want to do is we want to use pureed foods, okay? And a lot of people think those as baby foods, but we can use adult foods and flavors inside of purees. Because if you don't have teeth, all teeth do besides go smiling, right? Aside from smiling, all teeth do is break down food to make it easier to digest. And we can do that mechanically with a food processor or a blender or something like that, right? We want to use adult foods and adult flavors like, you know, chicken and dumplings. We can use beef stew. We can use anything. It doesn't have to just be a smoothie, right? You can eat adult food when you have inability to chew and swallow, right? Blend it up, add extra liquid to make it easier and palatable, because if it's got a lot of starch in it, it'll thicken. It's harder to drink, to literally drink or chew thick things. And we want to use flavorful liquids, not water, to stretch out that recipe, right? Take an individual portion, add extra beef stock if it's beef stew, add extra chicken broth if it's chicken based, milk if it's milk based, tomato if it's tomato based, non-dairy if it's non-dairy, seafood if it's seafood, etc., 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 right? And all we got to do is pop it in a blender, make sure it's hot, and then adjust the flavors and seasonings. If you've got no salivary glands, you need extra, extra, extra liquid. So things have to be liquidy. It can't be thicker. It's got to be super runny. And we just want to blend everything in there and season it appropriately. And that is how we accommodate for inability to chew and swallow. So that is the introduction to cooking for chemo. I'm Chef Ryan Callahan. Thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And let's just review really quickly. Roundness of flavor is all five senses are interlinked: taste, smell, touch, sight, sound, and of course, memory and association. We combat loss of appetite by remembering how we use our different senses in the eating, which are sound, sight, touch, smell, and taste. Proper seasoning order is salty, savory, spicy, sour, sweet. We want to avoid things we don't like, eat more of what we do like, and of course, make our food interesting looking, interesting smelling, and build that relationship with food. We want to use our palate cleansers inside of our cooking to avoid metallic tastes. We want to think about texture and avoiding extra heat, hot and spicy things with mouth sores. With nausea, we want to use soothing herbs, aromatics, and medications that work to combat nausea. So again, I'm Chef Ryan Callahan. You can find me at cookingforchemo.org. Thank you guys for tuning in, and it was great to be here at Gilda's Club, Kansas City. If you have any questions, you can always email me, cookingforchemo@gmail.com. I'm not hard to find, and I look forward to answering any questions that you guys have. Have a great day.